Welcome to Unite Now, where we bring unity to you, wherever you are.
Hi, my name's Emory, and I'm here to talk about some takeaways from our investigation into the impact that COVID-19 has had on the gaming industry. The full report for this is available for free download online. No email sign up or marketing newsletter opt-ins are necessary. We want to get this information available for the gaming industry regardless of developer size or relationships. The link for this will be at the end of this talk. So, a little bit about me. I've worked on games ever since I was a kid. From starting out making Flash games way back into pre-Adobe days, to working as an artist on several indie titles. I eventually transitioned to working as a producer and product manager on some games that you might have heard of before, such as The Sims and Call of Duty. Now, let's talk a little bit about Unity. Unity is best known for its game engine, which powers 53% of the top mobile games on the market, as well as experiences on PC, console, and mixed reality. Unity has created a complete platform that enables you to not only create, but operate and monetize your games. In addition to our core game engine, our monetization platform has massive scale. We serve over 100 million ad views every day and help over 60,000 developers making a living creating awesome games. We also acquired Delta DNA last year, which provides sophisticated player engagement tools for game makers, powered by deep data analytics. This end-to-end solution enables the game developers to better understand player behavior and creates personalized experiences for them in real time. Lastly, anyone who has tried to run a live service game before knows that it's not a one-man job, and producing these kind of gaming industry insights is no different. Our team here at Unity has worked on some of the most established ad networks and gaming developers in the business. We understand gaming, monetization, and most importantly, how the two of them work together. If you'd like to learn more, you can find out more on our website. So I'm going to be using these two terms throughout the presentation, so I want to clarify them. Since this report covers all kinds of gaming, we've split them into two distinct groups. HD gaming refers to PC, Mac OS, and other desktop platforms with graphics typically rendered in high definition. And as you might imagine, mobile gaming refers to iOS, Android, and other smartphone devices. Before I dive into the takeaways, I want to talk about how to read the charts. Unity and gaming in general has grown a lot every year, which means that it's hard to compare the raw values of each year. The chart on the left shows what the raw data might look like. As you can see, 2020 has increased by quite a bit, but it's hard to compare that to 2019 without lining both of them up next to each other. To solve this issue, we've normalized the data to the first week of each year, which became our baseline value. This means that each subsequent data point is basically a percentage change above or below the baseline value. So that means that the first week of the year would start at 0%, and subsequent weeks would be plus or minus that baseline percentage number. This way, we're able to see with more clarity what the true difference was between each year. All right, let's dive right into it. Our first four takeaways will be about how COVID-19 has affected overall gaming habits. We've actually got 19 takeaways in this report, so I'm going to run through each of them pretty quickly. The video recording for this will be sent out later, and the full report is also available to download for free online, so don't worry if you missed something. All right, our first takeaway is that more players are gaming than ever. Compared to 2019, we saw a 17% increase in mobile gaming daily active users, and a whopping 46% increase on the HD gaming side. Traditionally, players have to carve out a little bit more time out of their day to play HD games. But with everyone staying at home, these HD games saw the most significant bump. Mobile gamers didn't slash either though. In 2020, there was already an increase above the baseline from earlier in the year. And when the global pandemic was declared, there was a noticeable spike upwards. I also want to talk about why we picked the second week of March to draw the COVID-19 line. We picked this week since on March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic, and that week also lined up with many quarantine timelines around the world. So not only are more people playing games than ever, the time that they play has also changed. Traditionally, we see gaming traffic peak on the weekends, which is Friday through Sunday in our case, and dip to their lowest on Wednesday and Thursday. This can be seen on the left chart, with a weekend highlighted in red and Wednesday highlighted in blue. However, if you look to the right of the COVID line, you'll notice that the gap between the two has narrowed significantly. The average percentage difference in gaming traffic between weekdays and weekends pre-COVID-19 was 1.5%. But after the pandemic was declared, it narrowed to 0.56%. And for 1 week in May, weekdays and weekends briefly flipped. Weekdays actually drove higher daily activity than weekend days. And this just shows that with everybody staying home and the traditional work-life balance disrupted, gaming has also shifted its own behaviors. So, like we discussed previously, with more people staying home, HD gaming has seen a surge in engagement. Comparing 2020 to 2019, not only are more players retained on their first day of HD gaming, even day 30 retention has increased by 8.8% since the week of March 8th. It's likely that with more people working remotely, they have more opportunities to sneak in an HD gaming session during the day, in between meetings, or right after work. And when you factor that with a lack of work commute, you have a recipe for great retention numbers for HD gaming. And our final takeaway of this section is all about the money. We found that microtransactions in mobile games grew by 24% when compared to the same time last year. To benchmark in-app purchase revenue, we looked at the revenue generated by players within their first week of playing a mobile game. In-app purchase revenue typically peaks during the traditional December holiday season, but this year we saw record highs posted in March and April when compared to the 2019 holiday numbers, which is highly encouraging for anybody trying to make money off their mobile app. All right, next we're going to look at how COVID-19 affected mobile game advertising. The mobile market is a huge part of the industry, and it's definitely seen some big shifts during the pandemic. Given that mobile daily active users has increased, one wouldn't be surprised that mobile gaming ad revenue and traffic also increased. However, while daily active users only went up by 17% when compared to 2019, ad impressions and revenues were up over 50%. It's no surprise that with disposable budgets shrinking, some players might choose to engage more with gaming ads to get rewards in their games rather than purchasing them with their money. We've also seen more and more games try out ad revenue in addition to in-app purchases. To learn more about this, check out our 2020 mobile game monetization report that we published earlier this year. The link to it will be in the report that you can download at the end of this talk. So, it's also no surprise that the average number of ads watched has increased. Users in mobile games generally watch 3 to 4 ads per day, and in our 2020 mobile game monetization report, we benchmarked this at around 3.3 ads per day per active ad user. However, in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, this number has stabilized to an average of 3.8 ads per daily ad watcher, which is a half ad increase per daily ad watcher. So a half ad increase per day doesn't sound like much, but it actually translates to a huge volume influx when it's factored across millions of mobile gamers around the globe. And lastly, some less than rosy news. So ECPM stands for effective cost per mil, and it's the money that's generated by every 1,000 ad impressions for the gaming publisher. ECPM typically decreases after the holiday season at the beginning of the calendar year, but will level out around March. However, with 2020's increased ad volumes and conversion rates across the board, coupled with a decrease in brand and non-gaming marketing campaigns, individual average ad performance decreased more than usual in March. For game developers that were monetizing using ads, overall revenues were still up due to the higher volumes that outweighed this performance decline. When you compare this drop to 2019's baseline performance, it's actually not that big of a change. However, given that this year was already trending at a higher baseline, when that March pandemic hit, gaming publishers certainly felt that. So you can see there's a larger dip after that first week of March when compared to 2019. All right, so next, let's look at the other side of the mobile gaming ecosystem, user acquisition. There's been a massive increase in the number of mobile gaming app installs, with an 84% increase compared to the same time frame last year. Usually install numbers trend below the first week of the year due to the winter holiday, but 2020 was already actually performing about 13% above the baseline that we saw in 2019. The effect that pandemic conditions had on the install numbers in early March is honestly extraordinary. We think that with people having more free time on their hands, this translates to more open exploration of various apps on the App Store or even installing apps from ads that they see. So to line up with the previous point, the click-through rate for mobile gaming ads also increased significantly. We define click-through rate, or CTR, as the number of users who clicked on an individual ad divided by the number of ad views. This is important since clicking on an ad is the first active engagement step in marketing funnels towards desired actions, such as an app install. So click-through rate generally falls in the range of 1 to 2%, but due to the millions of ad impressions that flow through the gaming ecosystem, Even small adjustments can cause large changes down the marketing funnel. As the COVID-19 situation evolved into a pandemic, click-through rate deviated from the usual decline in February to spike in March to levels higher than those typically seen during an active holiday season. So we define conversion rate as the percentage of players who view an ad and then actually proceed to install the ad they view an ad for. So think of this as a next step in that funnel when you're thinking about click-through rate. In 2020, there was a 23% increase when compared to 2019's average conversion during the same period of time. Improvements to Unity's ad serving algorithm year over year already had 2020 performance benchmarked higher than 2019's, but the pandemic's bump is noticeable a week after the official declaration of the global pandemic. And the reason for that week's delay in conversion spike is due to the 7-day attribution window that a lot of advertisers will see. And lastly, there's been an unprecedented decrease in cost per install, or CPI, for gaming apps as non-gaming advertisers pull back their budgets. This means that there are fewer competitors vying for the same users' eyeballs, and in fact, that same user group grew by a lot, as we saw by that mobile DAU number that we talked about earlier. It's not all great though. A drop in CPI is great for advertisers who wish to acquire users at a cheaper rate, but the revenue that the publishers get from ads can decrease due to the decrease in eCPM. Next, we want to see how different parts of the world reacted to COVID-19. So different parts of the world were hit by the pandemic throughout different points in time, and we want to see how each region reacted. So we've picked a few countries to focus on for the sake of clarity here. The conclusion was that all countries saw similar behavior and performance spikes, but these spikes were staggered out based on when regional lockdown measures were enacted. So let's start with China. China was the first to implement stricter methods, with authorities imposing a lockdown on the Wuhan province on January 23rd, 2020. Next, let's look at Italy and Korea. Italy followed suit on February 23rd, with Lombardy and northern provinces entering lockdown after a surge of confirmed cases. The entire country would be locked down by March 8th. South Korea followed a similar timeline, with residents of Daegu asked to stay home on February 20th. And then finally, much of Western Europe and the United States were enacting stricter measures as the World Health Organization announced a global pandemic on March 11th. Gaming volume usually experiences a decrease immediately following the traditional December holiday season, and the data from 2019 on the right chart demonstrates that pattern. But 2020 actually defies this trend and shows the effect of global pandemic conditions surpassing holiday numbers in a lot of the regions that we're looking at. And you might notice a small spike upwards for China in 2019's graph, and we're going to cover that in just a second. So we want to focus on China in particular because it's a really high traffic region and has some interesting traffic lines. Chinese New Year signifies a huge spike upwards for gamers in one of the most populous regions in the world, but COVID-19's effects actually complemented this trend. So Wuhan's lockdown on January 23rd, 2020 coincided with Chinese New Year celebrations on January 25th. Usage spiked during 2019's Chinese New Year, but during 2020, COVID-19 has had the effect of adding onto that spike and sustaining the increase for several months, even as restrictions have been eased. We've used DAU and mobile ad impression traffic as proxies of overall traffic, since they give a sense of scale per user along with how much money is flowing throughout the ecosystem. And you'll see in both of these charts, in 2019, you had that peak on Chinese New Year, and traffic spiked back downwards afterwards. But in 2020, COVID actually sustained that spike throughout much longer periods of time. Next, we want to see if COVID-19 affected how players engage with their games. So, thanks to their portable nature, a lot of mobile games see activity when players are on the move. A certain subset of gaming apps, let's call them commuter apps, have play patterns that make them easy to play while commuting on public transit like buses and subways. They also have shorter play sessions, which makes them easy to pick up and put down during the workday. Who hasn't snuck in a little gaming session in the middle of work? On the opposite side of the spectrum, there are mid and hardcore mobile games that require longer, more concentrated play sessions. These games mirror the gameplay depth found in HD titles, and some of them are even direct ports of HD titles. In the months leading up to the global pandemic, we saw mid and hardcore app traffic performing better than 2019. This can be attributed to the earlier rollout of pandemic control measures in Asian countries like China, South Korea, and Japan, where coincidentally, mid and hardcore gaming apps are much more popular. We also do see a slight spike upwards in commuter mobile traffic during the week of March 8th, but it quickly dips back down to below 2019 levels. We also looked into if players were playing more often. The number of average mobile gaming sessions per player tends to increase over the early parts of the year as people return to work, since mobile gaming is a bite-sized experience that can be played while commuting or during lulls in the workday. After the COVID-19 pandemic was declared, the normalized session count per player has increased above last year's benchmark. The year-over-year gap has widened since the onset of the pandemic, as you can see on the left chart. The number of HD gaming sessions per player is generally inconsistent due to the effect of large game launches in a limited sample pool. We did not see a significant change in response to COVID-19 conditions, and you can see this in the right chart. The lines are quite spiky and have no real discernible pattern. So, in times of sheltering in place, many people have reported feeling isolated. We want to see if they are turning to social apps to fill that gap, and they sure were. Social networking apps and social gaming traffic increased by almost 83%. Generally, social apps decline in usage during the spring and summer as people start to spend more time outside and have more activities available to them. But COVID-19 pandemic conditions have caused the traffic for these apps to skyrocket. While gatherings of people are widely discouraged, social apps and multiplayer features have seen a ton of increased usage as people seek that additional connection. We also saw more players playing multiple games, with simultaneous games per user up by 5%. During non-pandemic times, users on average play around 1.5 games at a time, and many users play only one game, and there's also a good number of them that play 2 to 4. But COVID-19 seems to have caused a shift. For the first time ever, many of those one-game-only users have picked up another app to occupy their newfound free time, and many of those users who play 2 to 4 games have added an additional game onto their roster to occupy the free time that they have. Alright, so our final two takeaways are centered around pandemic gamers. These are players who started playing after the pandemic was declared by the World Health Organization on March 11, 2020. We want to see if they behave differently than the players who had been playing before. So we found that players who started playing since the pandemic was declared converted to paying players at a higher frequency than existing players, 27.5% more often actually. But their daily average revenue per paying user was far lower, 8% less. As the initial boom of new players from COVID-19 conditions leveled off, average revenue per paying user for this cohort begins to normalize. Daily average revenue per paying user approaches that of existing players due to regular attrition of the players, so the remaining players in the cohort conform to existing player spending. We also found out that these new pandemic gamers installed 30% fewer apps for mobile ads than existing users. While overall conversion rates have gone up due to existing users converting more often, the new cohort of users brought in by COVID-19 conditions have a lower tendency to install apps when viewing mobile ads. This gap narrows as time progresses and the behavior of the new user cohort starts to conform to established trends. So, what's next? You can find out more by downloading the full report at the link on the screen or by scanning the QR code here. If you're interested in getting in touch with the Unity team, the report also has contact info near the end. I want to thank you guys for your time, and I hope everyone is staying safe out there.